In one of the omakes, the author says that he just thought, what if I had a fox girl take care of me after work? And easy to say that after reading that, I just thought, yeah, that's something I would like to. Hello everyone, welcome to the Weeb initiative. I'm your host, the Weeb. This is the show where every other week I'll be talking about anime, manga, and everything in between. This week, as one of the things that I need to actually review because it's been quite some time since I started this, I wanted to talk about the helpful Fox Senko-san or Sawayaki Kitsune no Senko-san. Easy to say, one of the fluffiest, most wholesome, and weirdly enough, not so much weirdly, but really something that I wasn't expecting, really relatable in a lot of ways. So before I start, spoiler alert, I'll be talking about most of the things that happen in this manga, and also I will just be talking about the manga. I have not watched the anime nor the what I think are the ASMR CDs, or if the anime has an ASMR section, but I know they exist, so just the manga here. That being said, let's start with the stats. So, helpful Fox Senko-san, or just Senko-san for short, is originally a manga written by Rimukoro and published by Kadokawa in Kadokawa Comics Ace. It originally ran from October 2017 to November 2022 with 12 volumes, 93 chapters, and after some time they had an anime series that ran from April 2019 to June 2019, made by Doga Kobo, also known as the studio that eventually would make Oshinoko, and being bought by Kadokawa. It has 12 episodes. I think they don't have any OVAs, which is a shame, being completely honest, but that's a story for another day. So let's go to the story and give a really basic overview about this whole thing. Mind you, this may be a really short review because as far as I can really tell, I don't have many things to say about this whole series. The plot itself does not demand much explanation, and in and of itself, it doesn't really care that much about the end or the objective. It is way more of one of those kinds of the journey is way more important than the final destination, and as such, it is much more of an experience-based manga rather than a huge, well-planned story. All things considered, the story really leans into you just being there, okay, enjoying the idea of the author himself, and also just being alright with it being really wholesome and cute and not really being taking itself too seriously, let's say. That is to say, and now starting actually telling about the story, that this is much more of an idea that eventually flourished into a manga rather than a story itself. So Senko-san is about our main character Nakano Kuroto, who is this average Japanese salaryman that is single, living alone, and currently working in what can only be described as a black company. They use the same terminology in the manga, and I think in the anime as well. So he's basically overworked by his job and lives alone, has this kind of depressing demeanor about him and depressing environment around him. It all changes one day when randomly a fox girl appears in his apartment, says that her name is Senko, and easy to say, she gives a really bad explanation for why she's there, and just takes him as someone to take care of, and basically it starts like this. So Senko's mission at this very start of the manga is just to take care of Nakano in all the ways, both in making food for him and helping with chores and stuff while he is the salaryman. He needs to work and doesn't have actually any time to actually do anything because he's one of those that only has like Sundays free to do anything. So there's that, and that also goes into a more, I would say, private, but it's not private in the way that it becomes, romantic. It comes as really more pampering kind of stuff. So Senko, at the very start of the manga, she really sets up this idea that she's kind of a mother for him. So she cuddles him and pets him whenever he's feeling down and so on and so forth. That being said, she's a fox girl, so they eventually and pretty early on do a bit with the fact that she has a tail, and the tail itself becomes a whole nother gag in the manga. Throughout the whole manga, it is the most important thing and so on and so forth. But easy to say that it starts with this relationship between Nakano and Senko. That is this Nakano works and then comes home to be cuddled by Senko and helped by her. And it starts really, really cute in that way, but at some point we get a more in-depth explanation from Senko that Senko is actually a divine messenger. She was actually sent to Nakano because she has a debt with one of his ancestors, and the whole story goes around with this because Nakano apparently is cursed with the grudge of the Nine-Tails Fox, which was originally evil yokai, and apparently Senko is part of the Nine-Tails Fox, and the whole thing kind of works around the fact that Senko and Nakano are together because of something one of Nakano's ancestors did, and he's cursed, and so Senko, in a way, she's trying to pay the debt she owes for that ancestor by taking care of Nakano and not letting the curse spread, because for what's worth, the curse will bring misfortune to Nakano and everyone around him, and eventually will grow so large that it will basically overwhelm him and bring misfortune to the whole world. This never really does happen, but they imply this a lot and they use it as a point of contention whenever we talk about whether or not Nakano can have a good life and so on and so forth. This all goes on. We meet some different people, at first at the least, most prominently Koenji Yasuko, who is Nakano's neighbor, who sometimes invites him over to play games. She's a manga artist and sometimes she asks for his help to finish some manuscripts for some deadlines and so on and so forth. And they have this really friendly relationship. Eventually, Yasuko also gets her own divine messenger, who is Shiro, who is a divine messenger much like Senko, but in a way she has a different job. Let's say she's a messenger, but her job is basically to exorcise random demons and yokais that appear because of the curse of Nakano that appear in the rounds and so on and so forth. And she eventually becomes friendly to Yasuko, which then leads to their whole relationship, and at some points in the manga we get to see more. Then from then on we get to meet other people. Eventually Nakano gets this co-worker called Fukuda, who we eventually find out that is actually a tanuki, it's really weird, the concept, for me at the very least, as someone who's not Japanese, because I don't really understand the idea, but basically a tanuki in this context is a kind of yokai animal that is basically a raccoon, but for some reason she can transform into a human and live around humans as a human. It really doesn't make sense in a way, but again, this manga does not care about the logic of the whole thing. You just need to go there for the vibes. And she develops this kind of more more romantic feelings towards Nakano, and the whole thing kind of works out in a way that Senko doesn't like Fukuda because she's a tanuki, and the feeling is mutual, so they clash a lot. And from then on, we get to meet other divine messengers. We eventually meet one of, or better yet, two of what would be Senko's bosses in Sora and Ginsan. And after some time, we get to meet also one apprentice, that is Suzu, who then eventually get to be the, let's say, the divine messenger of Nakano's boss, and the whole thing kind of works out that way. So each of the humans that we get to meet actually gets a divine messenger, outside of Nakano's best friend, but that's a whole other thing, and he barely appears in the manga at all. The thing is, right, so what the story tells, basically, is that Nakano starts off really depressed in many ways. He starts with a bad job, living a bad life, and eventually gets this miracle that is Senko-san to take care of him, both in an emotional way and in a more physical way. So she can actually home cook for him, she actually cleans the house for him, and she doesn't actually ask for anything in return. It is really heartwarming that way, that something so nice would happen to someone who works so hard. And I think in a symbolic way, as Senko-san brings luck with her being a kitsune divine messenger by living with Nakano, he eventually gets out of his black company, he gets a better job, he gets a better boss, he helps Fukuda also get out of there and work with him. And through that, I'm sorry, I don't remember the boss's name, but she eventually gets to be a romantic interest, whatever. And Senko basically symbolizes the coming of luck for the most part, and the turning point of Nakano's life. And this is a whole thing where, and I think this is the most important bit, is that the whole manga, it basically brings this message, this idea of reevaluating your life choices, because we always have a way to turn things around. So in this way, and I know this is a really messy kind of review, but in this way, I think the one thing that Senko-san really brings out is that even though life may be hard, we can always kind of change it. And in the case of Nakano working to a black company, it kind of related to me a bit too much, and not to really enter into the specifics of my job, but let's just say it kind of made me think of myself in that way. And it comes up with the idea that we can always kind of try and go there and find a new job, find a solution for our problems. We just need to actually step back and actually analyze stuff. And it is hard. It is something that not everyone can do, but it is something that is possible. And for the most part, that's the idea of this manga, right? So in coming to Nakano's life, Senko basically changed the whole course of it, but the manga has this really nice way of showing that all the change that happened in Nakano's life, or when we talk about his outlook on life, and first his job, then outlook on life, and the way that he thinks about stuff, it all started with Senko-san, but all the changes were because of him, because Senko couldn't do it for him, let's say. So she may have been the wake-up call when then he took the first step to change, and that's the thing, right? So I may be really too much into this, but that's the idea. Senko-san is basically the story of someone getting their life together through having a fox girl living with them. And this is the part where I need to talk about the omakes. So I take omakes pretty seriously whenever I read manga, and I really enjoy whenever there are omakes in a manga, in most cases, or at this point 2025, whenever we talk about scans and translations, not everyone that does it keeps the omakes intact, or sometimes don't take the time to translate them, which I think it's a shame because the omakase, mainly the ones that the authors talk about stuff, are really, really nice to see inside the mind of someone who actually writes the manga that you like. So, in a way, I really appreciate whenever I can read an omake. Shout out to High School of the Dead, I think volume 2, when they actually acknowledge the scans. Oh boy, how I miss them. Whenever. The thing is, right, whatever. So, talking about Senko-san. So, one of the first omakes that appear is the author talking about how one of these days the idea of Senko-san basically started as, what if I had a fox girl take care of me whenever I finished work? And it comes up, right? So how many people do you know that basically are alone, live alone, are single, working what they think is a dead-end job, and they don't actually have any prospects in life? And I mean, in terms of, let's say, proportions, right? I can see where they come whenever we talk about work in Japan. It is kind of a dire situation. But outside of Japan too, in the world right now, how many people are living single, alone, and in a dead-end job? And the whole thing kind of clicked with me, that the idea for this manga came from such a common place, and through reading this, with how much heartwarming and wholesome the whole thing is, because Senko is so cute with Nakano and in her mannerisms, and the whole thing kind of really worked out. The serotonin was there, like, it is really nice in that way, and it just gave the fantasy of what your average salaryman or salarywoman, what we all want is to have some kind of security when we come home from work. And it is such a simple thing, but at the same time it's such a palpable thing, such a thing that is so close to most of us, and in that way I really, really appreciate this manga. And basically it is that the whole thing is a whole journey about what if you just had a fox girl take care of you. And now that here comes the part where I need to talk a bit about the negatives of this manga, just because in a way, it is something that I know that it has to have an ending, and not all manga can keep on going forever. We don't talk about Detective Conan or One Piece, but hear me out. The one thing that really, really bothered me with the ending of this manga, and I don't know if they will get second season. I would not bet on it because it's been so long. It's been, at this point, 6 years since the anime originally launched. But basically, right, the one thing that I didn't like about the ending. So I talked about the curse and everything else, right? So at one point or another, they come up with this idea that everyone will go to these special onsen that Senko can open a portal to, and basically it is a different plane of existence for the divine messengers to go and stuff, and everyone takes onsen trip with the bonus that it has purifying spiritual powers and so on and so forth. What happens then is that they just dropped this bomb out of nowhere, that the curse is so unbeatable, so stubborn in itself, because they start to actually say that the curse itself is a being of some sort. It is so strong and so undefeatable that at one point or another they come up with the following idea. So Nakano has to go through a special ritual to then, for one reason or another, marry, because then he would have a half. They would basically split the curse in half, more or less, and half would go to Senko, half would go to Nakano, but Senko can handle half the curse because she's a divine messenger of a high level, and Nakano would need to actually marry someone to actually hold on to the other half to get spiritual energy together or something like that. And it comes down to the fact that they need to actually find someone to marry Nakano in the 3 girls that we know, excluding Senko. So it would be either Yasuko, Fukuda, or his boss, and this all comes up within like 1 to 2 chapters, and he gets dumped altogether by Yasuko and the boss really fast in the first chapter. And then the second chapter, basically Fukuda says, yes, we're going to marry. And at this point in the story, we already know that, all things considered, everything that happened and so on and so forth, Nakano and Senko love each other very much in a romantic way. And it all comes with this bittersweet feeling that they basically will have to kind of live together but not be really together in marriage. And then Nakano needs to actually marry someone proxy to Senko, and Fukuda kind of is okay with being second place for the most part, but then someone says that actually they will need to stay separated for how many years it takes to then Senko to basically attain the part of the curse that is with her, because otherwise it would undo the whole thing. And then the whole thing kind of becomes a mess, because they put this much drama inside of a single thing that they didn't actually need to, because at this point we were just happy leaving everyone together and having their weekends together and doing stuff and so on and so forth. And for some reason out of nowhere, Senko and Nakano need to be separated for how many years it takes, meaning basically that Nakano would live out his life as a human and not see Senko again, even though he loves her, and someone would need to marry him kind of forced, and knowing that he wouldn't love them back. And it is a whole mess. It just feels bad, you know. And for whatever reason, and this is the cheesiest ending that they could have done, they come to the altar to do the wedding, and when shit actually hits the fan and Senko as the master of ceremonies hits him with the question of, do you accept her as your bride, he just gives zero fucks and says, no, I want to be with you, and whatever, we will deal with this together, and so on and so forth. And then everybody just, it is a whole mess. It is a whole mess. He ends up together with Senko for one reason or another. The manifestation of the curse that he had with him this whole time, this kind of black smog in the format of a fox, condenses into which is a fox baby, and the thing just don't work out. And then they come to the conclusion that, yeah, we will raise her as a normal person, because if she became a humanoid right now, we can actually try to teach her how to be a good person, not be the nine-tailed fox, which originally almost destroyed the world or all those 1,000 years ago. And the whole thing just, yeah, that's the ending, alright. And then the manga just ends. If it didn't make any sense right now, that's okay. That is the feeling that you need to have whenever you finish this fucking thing. And that's basically it, you know. The ending is really, really cheesy. It's really rushed. They put so much drama into something that they didn't need to. They put the whole thing about the marriage was just... The thing is, right, so let me calm down for a bit, but the thing is, throughout the whole thing, the whole 90 chapters of this whole thing, we all get the idea that no matter who appears, first girl is Senko in the race. It's not really a competition. It cannot be anyone else other than Senko. And for one reason or another, when the author comes up with this thing about marriage, you know that everybody will be pissed at the end, because nobody wants to actually do that, because they all know it's Senko. And then he says that it cannot be Senko, and then what? Why? And then the thing is, I'm mad at this ending, mostly because the explanation is really weak, because it comes out of nowhere without really any preamble, any foreshadowing, anything, and the whole thing about being separated comes out of nowhere, and it's just a mess. And this comes to say and comes to show that even though the whole manga is good. The ending is actual, it's hot garbage, let's say. And this is not to like discredit the author. I think that he did a great job. I just think that he didn't stick the landing by the end, which is a shame, but it is something that as I'm reading more and more manga, watching more and more anime, I'm trying to accept the fact that people don't know really how to end stories. And that's okay. By the end of the day, that's okay. I still recommend this manga, all things considered, and you can just cut off the end and be happy with knowing that they live happily ever after now with a child. That is to say that they didn't really want the manga to have any, if at all, implication of anything past the romantic platonic phase, which I think is a noble goal, though I don't know if it is really something that they needed to think about. And that's about it. So thank you guys for listening, thank you guys for watching. Sorry for the messy kind of review, really short stuff and everything, but I really wanted to talk about this manga, and for what's worth, I just want to give my recommendation of read this manga, but know that the ending is pretty trash. But again, thank you guys for listening, thank you guys for watching. Please like, please share, please follow, depending on the platform you're in. Shout out, join the Discord, shout out, follow me on Twitter/X. All the links are down in the description, and I hope you guys stick around for next time. Bye.